Live on LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, and any other conceivable social media platform you can think of. Also, for those listening and watching on demand via Spotify, it is Freeformers Unplugged with myself, Toby, and my partner in crime, Emily. How you doing?
Hello. Yeah, I am good today. The sun is shining. The weather is sweet. No, it's really not. But yeah, no, do you get the reference?
It's is it?
Can't remember.
Yes, it's
Yes.
either Eddie Grant or Bob Marley. I think it's a Bob. It's a because they remixed it in the 90s,
Yeah,
and there was a whole load of like reggae remixes happening. Eddie Grant was Electric Avenue, but I think it's Bob Marley. But
I think so
anyone in
too.
chat, let us know.
But yes, I am all good today. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's not really actually that sunny here, to be complete. It has been raining a lot. And actually, I do believe the old log cabin may have sprung a leak or has some
Uh-oh.
sort of, on this side, there is some water ingress. I can't figure out where it's coming from either. Like I've walked around and kind of gone, there's no way any water can get into this point. Yeah, I know what I'm doing after this live stream. I'm doing some investigatory work about water ingress into Freeformers HQ Norfolk branch, because obviously your Oxfordshire branch.
Well, I think it is HQ. It's a registered address, so
That's true. Don't tell everyone that.
sorry.
Don't tell everyone that's where I live if they look on Company's House, because all my fans, all 0 of them, will be knocking at my door going, "Can we have your autograph?"
Just
Because
imagine.
I know, right? So, welcome everybody in listener land. I hope you're all doing well. We had a few comments actually before when we actually launched this post. So, our friend Paula Brockwell from the Employee Experience Project tagged in Maureen Brown and Julia Smith. So not sure if they're listening or joining in with us today, but if you are, let us know in the comments. It would be great to hear from you. And also, if anybody else is out there listening, watching, and engaging with us, please let us know as well. I know Julie Job Hop Bishop, my good friend from Norwich, or who lives in Norwich, was also planning to tune in as well. But let us know where in the world you're tuning in from, who you are. I mean, it tells us who you are, so you don't actually need to do that. But where in the world are you? What's going on? And what are your thoughts on today's topic, beyond Glassdoor, the real value of employee advocacy? What do we mean by this, Emily? What do we mean? What do you think we mean? And then I will tell you what I think we mean, and then we'll try and agree or disagree, as we usually do.
So let's start with employee advocacy, what we're talking about by employee advocacy. I mean, at this base level, we're talking about people saying nice things about your company, people being employees, current or former, um, saying nice things, saying, yeah, they are a good place to work, essentially. That is what we mean by employee advocacy.
I think yes. Broadly, I'm going to elaborate. I'm going to
Oh, please
elaborate as
do.
well because when you hear the word advocacy, a lot of people go through MPS or EMPS, and
Mhm.
that is just one indicator, I believe, of advocacy, or we believe is of advocacy. Actually, I'm not talking on your behalf. You're here, but that is one indicator, right? But I think if you take it from a customer world, is like how much do you advocate for that brand in every single thing you think and do. So talking to friends and family, which is what MPS tries to measure, but it can't tell you actually how many conversations you're having. It just tells you about the likelihood. But what are those actions and behaviors that ultimately define advocacy? And I think that's probably what we're going to explore on this session, right? Is that there is, for me, a huge untapped value and measure in advocacy that we just kind of lose because you kind of go, okay, you've left, you've been made redundant, you've left for whatever reason, like that's it, we're going to cut the strings, you go that way, we'll go this way, and we shall never ever ever talk again, unless you work for a large professional services firm that have alumni networks. But that doesn't seem to be commonplace elsewhere. And we should talk about our friend in Iran as well when we get back to that point. So how important, because we had this conversation the other day and I came up with the phrase, I think there is a measure of advocacy that should be a North Star metric for human resources, people, employee experience teams. And as I often do, Emily, I say it's a kind of throwaway comment to inspire you to jab back at me and kind of go, no, this is what I think, because that's how we, that friction is good and how we come up with new creative stuff. Am I right or am I wrong? Discuss.
That's not really a discussion point, is it?
Just discussion with the not in the, am I right or wrong more broadly, but with that very specific point.
Is there a North Star metric? I mean, maybe. You'd have to test it for definite to say,
But
to get it down to one.
But to get it down to one thing, but is there validity in it being your North Star metric at all?
Oh, you mean for your whole HR team?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Hit me with the easy questions, why don't you? So maybe. It depends what your strategic priorities are as an HR team. And ultimately, that's what your North Star metric is, right? It's your goal that you should be working towards. And when you're talking across a whole business, everything within your business should be aligned to that North Star metric, right? So that's what North Star metric is. So I guess it depends on your strategic priorities as an HR team. And obviously for a lot of people, they're going to be like, what? No, because I don't know if it can be. One of the things of a North Star metric is it has to be, so it can't be connected to your revenue. Your North Star metric can never be revenue because it just means you'll make stupid decisions with money, because there's lots of ways you can make money and lots of easier ways than what you're doing you can make money, but none of them will probably have all of the other things you want, impact, etc. Another thing is that it has to be a number that can always be increased. That's the bit where I think might get a little bit sticky if we're talking in real what North Star metric is, like, because you can't, well, will it always be increased? Because you always have people leaving, but you might have people leaving on a very, very, very slow basis, right?
Yeah.
So, so I suppose it doesn't technically breach that category. You've asked me a question which has really set me off thinking, and I don't think it's very interesting for anyone to be listening to.
No, I think you're bang wrong. I think it's very interesting because we've kind of just jumped into a phrase that is now just part of how we run freeformers, but also how we work with our clients as well, right? This term North Star metric, and it's come through a recommendation of a former freeformer, Alan Turner, pointed us in the direction of I was going to say a young chap, like I'm really old, a chap called Matt Lerner, who has written a book called Growth Levers.
Levers.
And I say levers because he's American and I listened to the audiobook, so it's now ingrained into me that the book's called Growth Levers, but it's Growth Levers, right? And he explores lots of different things, but also this concept of a North Star metric, right? So just recap then, because you kind of went through them in trying to answer the question. But what is the definition of a North Star metric?
So your North Star metric is the single number on which your entire company focuses to achieve growth, to work as a business. I mean, it's growth. It's all about growth, right? Because it comes out of Silicon Valley and you're looking to constantly grow. And to be honest, I think growth should be a thing that everybody wants to do. Like, even if you don't want to be, a bang, flash, whizzy Silicon Valley company, you can still aspire to grow, right? So yeah, it's one number, and there are a few rules, and there are a couple of others that I can't remember off the top of my head. But one is that it cannot be revenue, and another is that it has to be a number that is always growing. Because so you couldn't have anything where it would like kind of fluctuate around, like a percentage increase or anything. Actually, maybe you could have that. Never mind. Sorry.
Well, one of my questions was going to be, can it be a percentage? Because, and I'll come back to that because I think it could be, but
Yes, it could be. It could be, because if you're looking for growth, the idea is that growth could be forever ongoing, right?
yeah.
And that you could always be growing. I think you'd rather want a whole number rather than a percentage. That.
So I'm going to challenge you as well on the concept of growth and perpetual growth, because I think in some instances it kind of holds businesses like, and I suppose it's defined growth, right? Because like, especially when I've worked in kind of FTSE 100 companies, they've always aspired to be bigger and better than the year before. But surely at some point you're going to hit a ceiling in that you've kind of made the most out of your potential. And it's not necessarily about growth then, or revenue growth, or market share growth. It's about optimization and being the best at that size. Am I being naive, or like, because it feels like perpetual growth is aspirational, but also unachievable on a long-term basis?
I think we've wandered a long way off advocacy, but I do think that you are naive, because if you're a big company, you've got shareholders. Shareholders are demanding more return, right? Ever more growth and stuff. So it might be that your growth isn't perhaps in your, like you say, market share, although I think you'd be looking for that. You'll be looking to take over things. And obviously at some point you'll get limits put on it by like the Competition and Markets Authority saying you've got monopolies, etc., etc. Um, and then it'll be about diversifying revenue streams like Avenue Amazon has done. And I think that it will be bottom line. Ultimately, your bottom line can continue increasing, right? And maybe that's done through optimization,
Yeah.
right? Because obviously revenue being top line and your profits being your bottom line.
Okay, cool. So that aside, we've just explored North Star metrics. So what we're ultimately trying to look at here is, as a result of you being a HR person or a people person or team within an organization, what change are you trying to affect there? And so the reason I think potentially advocacy is a great North Star metric, because this is the very tangible output of the quality of employee experience. We'll talk about how you measure advocacy post employment in a moment. But actually, if you have a measure, you will always have people leave your company. We know that. It might happen at a quick rate or a slow rate, but that will number. So there you go. There's your perpetual growth. People will always leave your company, so the number of people leaving will always go up.
Yeah,
But
but you
not
don't want people to leave, because you don't want it to always be.
well. Yeah, but people will leave. You don't want people to leave, but they definitely will leave.
Yeah, but if your North Star metric is people leaving, which I
No, and
know
I'm
is
not
not what
saying.
you're
Okay,
saying, but you can
I,
do lots of things to get them out the door, and that will not help your business.
number of people leaving is part of the formula. I think in that
Mm.
you have to that has to be there, because that's the one of the things, right? But you've got people leaving an organization, and if you have given them the best employee experience, they should be advocates. If you haven't given them the best employee experience, they'll either be a detractor or a neutral, right? So ultimately, everything that you've done, and I think this really focuses on the entire user journey as well, because you can say, well, the L&D team did a great job and recruitment was really good and onboarding was great. But if all of those things say they're great and you're still ending up with like a low number of advocates leaving your company, then that's probably a bit of an issue, because it's not really joined up. So I think that if you want to be able to have this, or what I aspire to create, these holistic people employee experience strategies that create better employment experiences for people, making the world of work a better place for everyone, then you have to be able to look at a tangible output of it being, did people enjoy that ride or not? And that ride, you can only measure once the ride is finished. You can't measure it whilst people are on the ride. If you're on a roller coaster, hey, how's this roller coaster? Are you enjoying it? Yeah, it's really good, thank you. And they don't know what the second half of the roller coaster is going to be like. You're kind of then going 3/4. Hey, is it still good? Oh, it's not as good as it was about 30 seconds ago, but it's still all right. And then you ask them once they left, how was that roller coaster? Oh, it was shit. Like, we've got lots of different metrics there that we can assign to different points of a journey, and the journey of employment is a roller coaster, if nothing else. So I think that's the natural end point, or the start of the end, is when someone sets foot outside the door. What are they saying? What are they thinking? And what are they doing? That is an indicator of advocacy. What do you think?
I think yes.
Great. So that's the end of this episode. We got there within 14 minutes. That is a world record for Freeformers Unplugged. Lovely stuff.
No, so I agree with you. Yes. What are they thinking, feeling, and doing? I think it's easier to just say, "Oh, let's measure that," than it is to do it, of course. Um, I think that let's talk about how you would go about doing it then, I think, because because it is really, it's an important thing to do. It's an important thing to measure, because I think the biggest thing is the value. And actually, I'm just going to circle back a second. I have a client at the moment who says that all the time, so I've now picked it up and I now say it all the time.
Emily's in corporate land. She said
I
circle
know.
back. I said it to Kirsty Bags Morgan the other day, and I then sent her a voice note going, I can't believe I just said that. I'm so sorry. But yeah, let's circle back and
No, because okay,
revert.
so I just did a little googling, because I always do, and I was like, what are common HR metrics or North Star metrics for HR teams? Because I know we thought about this, but nothing is in my head right now. Do you know what it says? Employee lifetime value, which is quite interesting. So employee lifetime value is the amount of value you get from your employees throughout their life with you. It's a formula that's derived from customer lifetime value, which is something marketing measures. What's quite interesting is that, like, 18 months ago, Toby and I, but mostly Toby, came up with the concept of mutual lifetime value, which is the balance between employee lifetime value and employer lifetime value, which is the other side. How much value do you give your employees throughout their business? Because we think that companies with a higher mutual lifetime value, so a higher ratio between the two, are doing better overall. And so perhaps mutual lifetime value could be a North Star metric. And then how this relates to advocacy is, at the moment, employee lifetime value, much like customer lifetime value, much like what you said right at the top of this, employee lifetime value ends the moment an employee stops being an employee. But they can still be providing you with an awful lot of value afterwards, in the form of maybe new customers, maybe referrals. This is where Toby brings out his Tesco story. Off you go, Tesco story.
Tesco. Tesco is a supermarket here in the UK, just in case you are from the other side of the pond, or the other side
Anywhere
of another
else.
different pond. Yeah, anywhere that there isn't a Tesco. You put me on the spot now. I'm trying to remember the story. So my old boss, when we first came up with the concept of mutual lifetime value and the measures of redefining the measures of success for a HR or people team, I spoke to one of my favorite bosses I've ever had. I've spoken about her before, and we'll probably talk about her in a leadership version of this live stream at some point, because there's some really cool stories there. But she bought into this methodology because of her own story, right? In that when she left Tesco, she left as an advocate. I was like, that's cool. What does that mean for Tesco? And what that meant for Tesco, and what it still means for Tesco, is I think about 10 years later, is that she still shops at Tesco as a result. Just to context of this, I worked at Curry's PC World for about 10 years, and I have not set foot inside a store yet or spent any money with them since, because of how atrocious most of that experience was. People were good, by the way, so if you did work there and I worked with you, there's no slight on the people. The organization was rubbish, and I've not been there for 8 years, so it might be better. But I can't advocate for that. Ding! Name of the app. So what she did was she identified that she has been a customer of Tesco since leaving as an employee, because she still values that brand. She still advocates for that brand. The really cool thing as a Tesco customer, every Tesco customer, if they want the best prices, needs to use a club card. So actually, as a HR team, you're kind of empowered to go and look back at your ex-employees and kind of go, are they still spending money with us? And so if this person has decided consciously to still shop with that supermarket 10 years after leaving, let's just, I'm going to do the maths now. Let's do live maths, because this is a live stream. How much does someone spend? There was a sharp intake of breath there. Do you not like maths? You love maths. How much? What's the average basket spend, do you think, a week at a supermarket? Like 50 quid?
It depends on the size of your family. 100?
Well,
hundreds nice easy maths, right?
100, great. I'm using a calculator, so that's fine. So 100 a week times 52 is 5,200 times 10 years. I should really just be able to, is £52,000. So already, as a result of this person having a great experience, it's returned £52,000 in value. Now, here's the kicker. That's not, and there are some organizations where you can't be a customer once you leave. So it's a metric that you can not apply to every organization, but you can still start measuring revenue from ex-employees. Point one. Point two is referral schemes. So referral schemes tend to only work when you work at an organization, which still baffles me. Now, referring someone from your network, friend or family, to go and work at an organization you went to work at is a big step. Such a big step that Google, and this is in a book called The Employee Experience Advantage, Google doubled their referral bonus from $2,000 to $4,000, and it had zero impact on the number of referrals, because when they researched it, it was about the heart, not about the money. So what we know is that is a real indicator of advocacy. you can correlate it with AMPS if you want, but actually that is a real measure of advocacy. So continuing a recruitment referral program beyond employment creates a lot of value for you, because obviously if you can increase that number, you're going to have more people referred to the organization, recruitment
Yeah.
and hiring costs are going to go down, all that kind of stuff.
And stick to it. I'm just going to interject with
Go
my
for
own
it. Yeah.
personal anecdote here, because my husband is still miffed about somewhere he used to work, which is gone went bankrupt in COVID, so I can say this. He got his sister to work for them, and because he left before she finished her probation, he didn't get the referral bonus, and he's still upset about that, like 8 years later. I appreciate we should probably just get over these things, but like I think it comes to an important point. Like if you say you're going to do something, like don't find ways to weasel out of it,
Well,
because that's how you're going to turn your loyal people who are loyal. Because he got his sister, he's obviously very protective of her, his little sister, to come and work there, and now he's like, actually, that was probably a bad move, and didn't recommend anyone else go and work there.
so actually it could have been you could have like doubled down on promoters for that organization. Instead, you doubled down on probably detractors.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Then there are other opportunities, right? So there's the opportunity that an ex-employee may strike up partnerships between the two, like their new employer and their current employer. There's a
Mhm.
value in that. And then there's also a value that they may go back and work there in the future, thus referring themselves to work there, although they probably wouldn't be.
I've done that.
Yeah, but you don't get a bonus for it, right? I referred myself.
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. But I have gone back and worked for a place where I used to work. In fact, if I look at my relationship with the ODI, like, so first of all, I mean, yeah, sure, okay, I was a contract, like short FTE, fixed term employment. But yeah, I've had every role under the sun with them, from contractor and twice employee, permanent and non-permanent, and I still freelance them periodically.
And so
Mm.
that makes their life easier as an
Yeah,
employer, because they're like, oh, we've got some super talent, you,
thank you. Thank
who
you.
is, it's all right, who is willing to continue working with us as a result of having a great time when they were here. How cool is that? But also, like, you can imagine that no one's really measuring that. Like, that isn't a
No,
measurable thing, but it's adding a huge amount of value, because it means I don't have to go and search for someone to help us with this job. I have someone who's ready and primed, knows the organization straight out the gate. And this leader that I'm talking about said, hand over fist, if the right job came up, she would go and work back at Tesco.
mm,
So it's like, okay, so if we added all the measures that we have just described right then, and we sprinkle a little bit of EMPS on the top, just because we can, then all of a sudden you've got this ability to create a robust formula that details not only the mindset of advocacy, but also the behavior of advocacy. And the one thing we know is that if you have mindset plus behavior, it equals impact. And lo and behold, what do HR always struggle to do?
demonstrate
Demonstrating
impact.
impact.
Louder at the back.
Everybody say with us, we want to demonstrate impact. Give me a D. No, it's too long a word. We're not going to do
Thank goodness.
that. So we have this ability. We have here's the great news: people are always going to leave your company. Cool. So are you able to measure once people leave your company? Absolutely. Are we doing it? Absolutely not. So this is where I think it then becomes a North Star metric, because you can then start understanding. Let's not try and build a formula on a live stream. That would be ridiculous. But even if we were to take X employee customer spend as a number, as more employees leave, that number should go up, but it also should go up. What you then probably want is, what is the average transaction value every week of ex-employees, right?
Yeah,
That's
basket
probably what
size.
you're,
Yeah.
yeah. So measure that. That becomes really interesting. Imagine going to your board as a HR team at Tesco or any supermarket or any retailer, anyone who sells stuff to people, that imagine if you could actually show that this is the value of our ex-employees. Here's the danger: there might not be any, because it's either the experience while they've been there is shitty, or the end of that relationship was shitty as well. And then I'm going to come to that one, because we'll talk about the other side of the coin too.
If it's something where you have a club card, though, you have a loyalty card, and that's your way that you identify yourself. What would be really interesting is you then would want to correlate that club card with an employee number, right? Which
Mhm.
you would be able to do in the case of something like Tesco or Sainsbury's or whoever, because you get staff discount. So you'd be aware of it.
Mhm.
But what you'd want to do is you want to see shopping habits before, during, and after. Because I can imagine that during you might do more because you get discounts and
Yeah.
stuff, right? And also you're there, so you're going to pick something up that you need. But like if you could compare the before and the after, then you would have an idea, unless your product has deteriorated, which you would be able to see, you'd be able to extrapolate that data and see generally that maybe fewer people are shopping with you. But then you'd be able to see before and after, and then you would quite confidently be able to say, correlation doesn't equal causation, but there is a strong correlation between how people are shopping with us as ex-employees.
I mean,
Imagine that.
that's pretty cool.
And
And
that
that's
shouldn't be that hard to do. Like it really, in the case of something where you've got a loyalty card, that should be very easy to do. And I'm very surprised they're not doing that.
They might be. I don't know. It's been a while since I've worked. I actually did some work with Tesco for 3 years, and they do some cool stuff from an employee perspective. But let me tell you this other story. We've got a few other people joining the live stream as well. So if you just joined the live stream, hello, welcome. We're talking about Beyond Glassdoor, the real value of employee advocacy. Drop a comment in, have a chat. If there's anything that you've observed about what we've talked about, drop something in chat. Let us know what you think. So you and me visited a potential partner of Freeformers probably about this time last year now, and I told this story because you did the thing where it's like, Toby, tell the Tesco story.
Oh, I don't think I prompted you. I think you
Oh, did
just
you not?
no. I think you just come up with the same stories all the time. That's why I was
Fair
expecting you to come up.
So,
Hey ho.
So we told this story, and it turns out that person also used to work for Tesco, which was quite interesting. I'm going to call. And what happened, or what they said, was, I am completely the opposite of your old boss. And I was like, oh, really? Go on. He said, hey, it was actually great when I was there. It was absolutely fine. But the last 6 to 3 months were awful. I was like, cool. Well, how does that manifest itself in any of the behaviors I've just talked about in terms of my old boss? And he went, the opposite. I don't shop there. I refuse to shop there. I'd never go and work there ever again. And I actively don't tell my friends and family to shop or work there. So there's no referral, there's no spend, there's no opportunity of that person coming back. And all of a sudden, we've now got the measure of promoters and detractors way beyond what EMPS gives you, but also understanding the value. Because if person A, my old boss, was over a 10-year period has just generated the organization £52,000 in revenue, guess what? Your employee experience has just cost £52,000 of revenue from that person for the next two years. So
10 years.
10 years, sorry. Yeah, tough. Wow, 52 grand on shopping in 2 years.
Yeah, and also it does depend how big your family is and everything. But hey, this.
Yeah, but we're
even half of that, 25 grand for like every employee, like over 10 years.
And Tesco has, I think, 300,000 employees. We're going to do live maths again. Tesco employees.
That means live Googling. Don't get.
It's a live stream. It's not a webinar. If it was a webinar, we'd be doing a presentation. It would be well oiled. This is why it's called Freeformers Unplugged, because we're live and wild. Numbers. I think it's 300. They're the largest private.
I feel like it's 330.
Oh, wow. 337.
Yeah.
518.
So I was actually going to say I think it's 336, and then I thought I might be wrong. I think it's gone up. Yeah, I looked it up.
Oh, okay, right.
Like,
but in the UK it's 309,000 because I know our good friend Rupert Graham actually has been overseas working with Tesco. She now worked for Tesco doing some cool stuff. So if we have 309,300 employees times, well, let's just do it a year. So what was it? We're going to do 50 quid basket size times 52.
Yeah, that might be a bit high.
We are not doing robust. Well, no, because not all these employees are leaving you'd hope, at the same time.
No, but I was saying not every 50 quid is, I think, reasonable if you're a family of 4. But
a week for a family of 4? Are you only spending 50 quid a week on shopping? What are you feeding your children?
Mostly vegetables, I think.
Well, okay. What do you want me to drop it down to? We'll do 30.
Yeah, okay, 30 a week.
£30 a week over 52 weeks across all your employees. So how much revenue are your employees generating for you? Tesco, I can't even read that number. It's too big.
Lots.
£482 million. So that's interesting. So that's revenue generated by current employees, let's say. how much of that is retained once they leave. That's super interesting. And that's assuming that everyone who works at Tesco shops at Tesco. I mean, if I worked at Tesco, I would probably shop at Tesco.
Yeah, well, they have obviously staff discounts and, like I
Do
said,
they? Do
convenience.
they?
You're there. They
Do they have
used to.
I don't know. I don't
They
know.
definitely used to. I would assume they still do. I don't know. If you happen to know, let us know.
Yeah, anyone out there who works in Tesco, let us know. Do you get staff discount, or do you, like? Is there like the Nando's Black card? Is there like the Tesco's Blue card where you get like Club Card Plus discounts? Interesting. Well, it's not that interesting at all, but if you do know, let us know. So all of a sudden, we're with, and this is what baffles me about HR and people industry, is like we're quantifying the human impact of employee experience in financial terms. Now, we're playing with some numbers on a live stream here. We're not actually trying to come up with the validation of Tesco's people strategy and how much value it's generating. But within about 4 or 5 minutes, and using the Google built-in calculator, we've come up with some rough ideas and hypotheses that we could go out and test. That's the pretty cool thing I think about advocacy, is that it opens the door for just a way more interesting conversation about employee experience than how do we know the return on investment of our induction and onboarding program because we want it to impact attrition. Bullshit! Not going to impact attrition whatsoever. Yeah. Sorry,
Okay,
I swore really loudly.
so we talked about B2C. B2C is easy. You could do it. You could get their data in the form of, if you had a former employee loyalty card type thing where you got an extra perk, whatever it was, could be something that's not going to cost your business an awful lot of money. You could get their data really easily, right? For B2C. B2B is a bit harder though. How would you go about doing something similar if you were a B2B business?
I just got to say, we've had Hannah Clark, our friend from Mass Marketing. I've got to read this because she prefaces, or no, she subnote. This adds nothing to a live stream. It's just a fun story. So, I mean, Hannah, this is what our live stream is all about. It's all about fun stories and going off on tangents. My sister-in-law works at Tesco and definitely gets a staff discount. She's worked there so long, a time before Google Maps. And she even had a special A to Z in her car that had all of the Tesco's in the UK in it.
Nice.
Does she still have it? Is my question.
Well, is it still accurate? Now she has Google Maps. She doesn't need an A to Z anymore.
Yeah, but you could like frame it and stuff, no? Like,
well, how are you going to frame a book?
Well, you'd rip out the page of your local area. You wouldn't do the whole of the UK, but I just have Norwich and the surrounding areas framed and kind of go, oh, I know where all my Tesco's were in 1996, depending, Hannah, on how long your sister-in-law has worked there, of course. Before Hannah took us on that tangent, you were asking me, how do you measure it in a B2B space?
Yes.
Yeah, how do you measure it in a B2B space?
No, I asked you. You go first.
Well, you obviously can't use that metric, right? That doesn't work because they're highly unlikely to be customers. But I think all the other metrics are still valid, right? The recommendations, the referrals, like when you're in the B2B space, there is this kind of little bit of incestuous type of business development where everyone like recommends and refers to each other and stuff like that. So there are going to be those opportunities more so, right? This is why I mentioned partnerships earlier on, is that, for someone who's leaving Tesco, they're highly unlikely, depending on what role they're in, but for the majority, they're highly unlikely to go to Sainsbury's and say, hey, have you heard of this little supermarket chain called Tesco? We should strike up some sort of partnership. Like that's not a measure of a success. However, if you jump from, well, here we go. You jump from one learning agency to another learning agency, a la, let me just think of the Video Farm and Solutions collaboratively. If you had two agencies that do relatively similar things, actually, when person X left one organization to go the other, there was a genuine opportunity for a really good partnership there, and I was like, we should do something together. Now, transpired nothing happened because they never responded to my emails, and now actually I'm like, well, that's fine. But there was that action, that was the purpose that me as an individual went, actually, I think my ex-employer and current employer could do something really cool together. So that action is really, really powerful. And it's even that's partnerships, but like it's the referrals again, right? It's like, oh, my old company doesn't do what my current company does. You should actually go, don't work with us, work with my old company. I could really recommend them or that person. And this is where like the the value of work coming in isn't really that well defined, because if you win work for an organization, it's pegged as a success for sales or marketing, and broadly nothing else. And it's like, was it genuinely sales or marketing? Or in the case, I've mentioned this story before, I'll mention it again, our good friends at Channel Assist, where we sat down with them, they won a new piece of work, and it was from someone who worked for them 10 years ago. It's like, that's not sales or marketing, that's great employee experience. The reason why they came back and trusted you with some B2B work that they now have is because you treat them so well. And it might not mature for 10 years, but it's still worth measuring, because how many people are doing that? If 10 people are doing that over a 10-year period, great. If 0 people doing that over a 10-year period, might be slightly concerned.
Depends on the nature of the business. I think you can't judge every business the same. Like a manufacturing industry, someone who's frontline on that, like you're not going to be making those kind of recommendations, even though it is a B2B business. But if you've got smaller medium businesses or agency styles, like you said, then it's much more likely, right?
Yes, but I think that, I know, just to your point, this is where you've got to go into, you've got to open the conversation, right, and go, we don't measure this at the moment. How could we measure this? Because there is stuff happening that we don't know about that could be adding value. And you might get to it and go, well, there isn't a way of doing it. And that's also fine, but at least try
I think it would be really easy to do something like this, right? So assuming you are a reasonably sized business, by which I mean you are not a micro business of, you've got more than 10 people, right? You've probably got some kind of CRM type thing, right? Or deal management software, some kind of sales system. And so when you come in, if you just tag a lead as it comes in, as it came from an employee or an ex-employee, like you create a category for that, easily done. Tag, boom, out the other end it comes, and you can see all the ones that were there and what stage they got to in your pipeline and all of that stuff. It could be really, really straightforward for you. Why are you making that face?
Because having worked for commercial teams and been in commercial teams and led commercial teams on this kind of stuff, I know the behavior would be to tag that as my lead, just from an ego perspective. Like, I'm not tagging that as that was mine. I found it because it looks better.
Fair. And this is when, fair. And this is when humans are terrible, and data is always biased because of humans. But theoretically, okay, it might not work in practice, fine, because salespeople all have massive egos.
I think you could make it work in practice. I think you could make. I'm being facetious, but just
only partly facetious. It's true.
Yeah, which is it's growth from me, because I'm usually 100% facetious, but now I'm only partly facetious. But it's this. I think it's this element that you've got to at least try, right? You've got to at least give it a go, not just kind of go, we'll just do attrition and we'll do a pulse survey every year and hope that everyone's happy and hope that that has an impact on the business. Because I, bottom of my heart, know that if I treat people better, they'll perform better. Don't just believe it, measure it. There you go. I think that's the new Freeformers tagline. Don't just believe it, measure it. No, it isn't. It's fine.
I like create a better world of work for everyone a bit more.
Create a better world of work, for everyone. It's just when we get like a TV advert at some point in the very, very distant future.
Sorry. Were we not having this conversation on Monday where you're like, old media is dead because you can't measure it?
Oh, I know, but it's just a good ego trip, isn't it? To go, look, there's a Netflix advert then, a Netflix advert.
Okay, you can probably measure in Netflix.
But then we'd have to establish where our market is and which streaming platform are the HR people most. There's a live stream. What streaming platform is the HR streaming platform or the L&D?
That's not a live stream. That is a Friday stream of random thoughts that have come up in your mind.
Well, and last Thursday, of course, I did my HR manager job simulator live stream where I played HR manager job simulator live. Turns out that game is awful, but I have found a better HR game, so I will do that. So we talked about that. We talked about kind of bringing that to a B2B world as well. I want to go back a little bit, unless you've got anything more to add on that, because the title of the stream, right, is Beyond Glassdoor. And so when we look at the publicly available metrics and data for advocacy, you can look at Glassdoor, you can look at Indeed. You can kind of look at LinkedIn, but you've got to do a lot of digging to find that stuff. Our good friend who was he was in the comments of our live stream probably 2 weeks ago, Will Proctor, came up with a really interesting concept of with our good friend Will and our also very good friend artificial intelligence, able to go into Reddit forums and see what people are saying about your organization and summarize that quickly and easily. A huge amount of data, but able to summarize that quickly and easily. Like, regardless of the quantitative data that you can get, there's a huge amount of qualitative data out there that you could also analyze. Would that add value?
Reddit.
Reddit, Glassdoor, and Indeed. So
Have,
pulling all the comments and trying to go doing the thematic analysis on all of those platforms.
I mean, have you ever read the Reddit comments of a place of work?
Yes, which is why I'm suggesting we do a thematic analysis and not quote them verbatim, to be completely honest.
I think there could be value. I think there's something to bear in mind, which is that it's your promoters and your detractors, right? Coming back to ENPS from NPS that we all know, right? Neutral people don't say anything. They just stay quiet. They don't have a real stake in this. The only people generally that care enough to write something or to publish something in some form is the people who have had an absolutely fantastic experience and the people who have had a terrible experience. And certainly on Reddit, you have a lot more terrible experiences than you do positive experiences. So I think it is worth. So I think it's not worth looking at it as an overall measure to see how things are, because I think it paints a skewed picture.
Mm-hmm.
What I also think, though, is that you can't just dismiss everything that's being said because it's skewed, okay? Just because it's not 100%, you can't generalize it across your whole organization and all your employees, doesn't mean that it's not valid and it's not things that are actually happening and things that you really need to address. So I think there is absolutely value in doing it, but it depends on Emily's broken record. What's the thing you're trying to achieve? Why are you doing it?
Interesting. So I think I agree with you. Right, it's not measurable data, or not data you necessarily want to be using as a measure, but as part of a human-centered design process, actually
Mm.
gathering some of that insight would be really useful, because in reality, when you're looking for pains and gains, it's good knowing the gains, but they're not that useful, because you're not really going to design anything to fix it. Like, you're not going to go, oh, people are really enjoying this, and it's making them work harder or better or whatever, we should fix that. Like, there's nothing to fix, that's fine. But you should fix the things that are pains. And I agree with you in that the line I hear constantly is like, oh, don't look at that comment, it was just a disgruntled employee. And of course, who was the one that made them disgruntled? It was their employer. And understanding why they made that. Here's an interesting one for you, possibly. Because employers can comment back, right, on these things, I think. They can on TripAdvisor, so I imagine they must be able to on Glassdoor. Why have I forgotten this?
Don't know. Because I've never seen it done.
I see. Well, I see. I tell you why I've got this in my head is because I know an employer out there who was getting a load of smack on that. You can respond.
Certainly on Glassdoor, you can, yes.
Cool. So they were getting a lot of smack talk on Glassdoor, and they went through this internal campaign of like, hey, let's get all our senior leaders to post really positive stuff about working here. So like, it's very, like, you can just see it. Like, it's like negative, 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 really, really positive. Like, it's like a switch. Like, someone literally turned the positivity switch on their Glassdoor. And have you ever seen anybody kind of, an employer, take the review to task and go, actually, you were a rubbish employee? Like, I don't think that would happen, but that's where the friction's going to come, right? When you evaluate these things, if someone leaves and feels that they had a rubbish experience and are going to put, negative things on social media, there is a reason for that. But what about those employees that were generally just rubbish? Like, how does an employer account for that? I think there's probably a small majority, but might be worth discussing.
Well, I think my question is going to be, this is not a word I know lots about, so I'm going to ask you if you do, but like on TripAdvisor, you can respond as a business, right? Or on any review site. So how do you manage them as a review site when it's been a really difficult customer?
well, you manage it as a customer success team, right? Is that you
Mhm.
charm the shit out of them until they're happy again. And this is right. This is what I don't get is like, but well, this is because there's an unquantifiable value to employee advocacy post employment. Because it's unquantified,
You
you
don't worry
don't.
about keeping them on side.
But because in a customer world, it is quantified and extremely valuable. You don't want that to happen, which is slightly bizarre that in these two very, very similar situations, in one instance, you go, here, have 20 quid's worth of vouchers. I'm really, really sorry. Come back to this hotel, come back to this restaurant, come back to this shop, and we'll fix it. Have this, have that, have that. Really quick responses to everything. Yet when it's employee, it's like, so the ex-employee who are getting all the negative feedback, no responses. No one reached out to the people that were saying those things because they were all in a WhatsApp group as well. I should know. I was one of them. And so you get to this world where some organizations just don't care about it. And this is where I think measuring stuff beyond Glassdoor becomes really valuable, because when you start doing that, you have no other choice but to care about it, because you realize actually how much it's harming your organization from either money spent, revenue lost, credibility loss, a whole host of things. But you've got to measure it to understand whether you're gaining or losing there, right?
Nowhere epitomizes this as much as the States, I think. Like, they're just, I mean, I'm interested, any Americans who are out there, or if it's like this in your country, wherever you're from, but like, customer is king, customer is always right. Like, you give the customer anything, and on the same time, you treat your employees like absolute garbage. That's such an American thing. Like, when I wander into, I don't ask me how this happened, but I wandered onto the subreddit anti-work, just listening about how terrible people's experiences are. And you're just like, this would never happen in the UK. Like, we have laws to stop this happening. And I know some employers are trash and will do the bare minimum, and some employees break the laws. And we've all got a story of someone who could have gone to an employment tribunal but just got paid off. Like, everybody knows at least one person. I know at least four. So it happens. I didn't say that. So it happens. But yeah, it's just this dichotomy, which I know is such a stupidly prick word to use, but like there's just this weird juxtaposition between like how the customer is always right and how the employee is such trash. And you're right, like the only way that is going to change is not through like union protests and all of that kind of thing. I mean, let's not get into that. I don't think that's going to work. It's through, because there's enough desperate people out there, it is through demonstrating to these people how they are harming their bottom line and they are hurting their pockets and their shareholders' pockets by treating their people so terribly.
Well, and well, we got to wrap up soon. But like the one of my other catchphrases is like, capitalism isn't going to go anywhere. Like, it is a system within it what most of the Western world operate, and so therefore, if you can't quantify the value of employee treatment that benefits the capitalist model, then you aren't going to have any impact. And this is almost the problem with HR people and L&D teams, is because they aren't commercially focused enough. And I know that said a lot, but it's true, because, and I only have picked this up because I worked in commercial role for like 6 years. Before that, I would have been in exactly the same situation. So that's how I get here, right? I've been in commercial situations and gone, oh, that's how it works. No wonder we're making these decisions. Only until you get to that point where you're embracing capitalism, embracing commerciality, and running with it and trying to make the best of the situation and the environment you're in, you're always going to come up short. Should we end with something positive?
Please.
I had a conversation at a networking event, 6 months ago. And I was talking to this chap about what we do. And he loves it. We talk a lot on LinkedIn. And he told his friend who runs a company in Iran about us. And it turns out, as a result, that company now hosts a monthly ex-employee lunch, available to anyone who used to work there, and he just takes them for lunch. And they just chat about, where are you now? What are you doing? And the amount of insight they get as an employer is fantastic. The amount of engagement they get from their ex-employee network is fantastic. And they got people returning as well. So I don't want to pat ourselves on the back too much, but as a result of our thinking, we are impacting not only the world of work here in the UK and the US, but also in Iran, believe it or not. And I think that is just such a heartwarming story that it didn't take a lot of time and effort to do that. It just requires thought. And all of a sudden, you've got something you can measure there as well, which I just find absolutely fascinating. And it's reminded me that I need to catch up with that individual and actually find out how that company's doing, because it seemed like they were doing some really cool stuff. Emily, anything you want to pick up in summary?
No, I'm literally about to like just die from coughing. I was hoping you were going to finish it there.
Oh, sorry. So next week we are going to be talking about artificial intelligence, because why wouldn't we? Everyone wants to talk about artificial intelligence. And we got some spicy thoughts on it, because realistically, the hogwash that you see on LinkedIn and really how people are currently using artificial intelligence really is only scraping the surface. And the surface is pretty much at the bottom of the barrel. Like, it isn't the best way to use this stuff. And ultimately, in the next 12 to 24 months, is my belief, is that it's fundamentally going to change the way we go about employee experience. So that is what we're talking about, 3 p.m. UK time next Wednesday. This will also be available as a podcast and available to rewatch on LinkedIn. So if you are on Spotify, you can join us then, or you could just hit that subscribe button and listen to us all over again and again and again. And with that, we wish you a lovely Wednesday, and we'll see you next week.